It's opening week here at AO26. Roger Federer's already touched down, so it's time to chat to some of the fans to hear how excited they are. What's your favourite tennis player of all time?
The great Australian cash grab. How tennis just changed forever with a $111.5 million bombshell. Welcome back to Court Vision Plus, your absolute #1 source for the rawest, realest, and most explosive tennis news on the planet. If you are new here, stop what you are doing right now and smash that subscribe button. Seriously, Court Vision Plus is bringing you the kind of tennis coverage that the mainstream media is too scared to touch, and you do not want to miss a single second of what we are about to unpack today. Folks, I need you to sit down for this one because what I am about to tell you is going to blow your mind completely. The Australian Open has just dropped a financial bombshell so massive that it is sending shockwaves not just through tennis, but through the entire sporting world. We are not talking about a little pay bump here or a modest increase there. No. We are talking about a full-blown cash explosion that is rewriting the rules of professional tennis forever. The tournament organizers in Melbourne have absolutely cracked open the vault, and what is pouring out is nothing short of spectacular. Are you ready for this number? The 2026 Australian Open prize pool has reached a staggering, mind-blowing, jaw-dropping $111.5 million Australian dollars. Let me say that again so it really sinks in. Over $111 million up for grabs at a single tennis tournament. This is not a typo. This is not a drill. This is the new reality of professional tennis, and honestly, the game will never be the same again. The Happy Slam has officially transformed into the Wealthy Slam, and today we are going deep into exactly what this means for the sport, for the players grinding it out on the circuit, and for the tennis economy as a whole. We are going to follow every single dollar, unpack the drama brewing in both the men's and women's draws, talk about the shocking withdrawals that have everyone buzzing, and reveal the revenge plots that are about to unfold over the next 2 weeks in Melbourne. This is the kind of tabloid-style tennis drama that you came here for, so buckle up because this ride is going to be absolutely wild. Before we dive into the money talk, let me just remind everyone that Court Vision Plus is your new home for unfiltered tennis content. We are building something special here, a community of real tennis fans who want the truth without the sugarcoating. So if you love what we are doing, do us a massive favor and hit that subscribe button, smash the like button, and turn on those notifications because we are posting content that you absolutely cannot afford to miss. Now, let's get into the nitty-gritty of this financial revolution. The numbers coming out of Melbourne this year are frankly ridiculous, and I mean that in the best possible way. The Australian Open, which runs from January 12 through February 1, has officially announced a total prize pool of $111.5 million Australian dollars. To give you some perspective on just how insane this jump is, last year's tournament offered $96.5 million, which at the time was already considered generous. But this year's increase represents a massive 16% boost in just 12 months. That is not incremental growth, people. That is a statement. That is Tennis Australia standing up and saying, we are going to take care of our players better than anyone else in the world. Now, obviously the champions are going to be walking away with life-changing money. The singles winners this year, both the men's and women's champions, will each pocket a cool $4.15 million. That is a 19% increase from last year's winner's check. Just imagine that for a second. You wake up, you play some tennis matches, and by the end of 2 weeks you are walking off the court with over $4 million in your bank account. That is the kind of money that sets you up for life, that buys you properties in multiple countries, that secures your family's future for generations. That is absolutely insane money for 2 weeks of work, even if it is the most grueling, pressure-packed 2 weeks imaginable. But here is where the story gets really interesting, and this is where Craig Tiley, the mastermind CEO of Tennis Australia, deserves some serious credit. The real revolution is not happening at the top of the prize money distribution. It is happening at the bottom, and that is where the tabloid drama meets the real-life struggles that most tennis fans never even think about. For years, one of the biggest criticisms of professional tennis has been that it is a sport for the elite few. If you are not ranked in the top 50 in the world, you are basically scraping by, living tournament to tournament, struggling to pay for coaches, travel expenses, and training facilities. The financial reality for players ranked outside the top 100 has traditionally been brutal. Many of them lose money on the year even though they are competing at the highest level of the sport. It is a grinding, exhausting existence that breaks the spirit of countless talented athletes who simply cannot afford to keep chasing the dream. Well, Craig Tiley has apparently decided that this narrative needs to die, and he is putting Tennis Australia's money where his mouth is. Listen to what the man himself had to say about this massive prize pool increase. He said, and I quote, "The 16% increase demonstrates our commitment to supporting tennis careers at every level." That is not just corporate speak, folks. That is backed up by some seriously impressive numbers that show Tiley is not just throwing cash at Novak Djokovic and Carlos Alcaraz. He is looking at the players ranked 150th in the world, the grinders who are bouncing between challenger tournaments and ATP 250 events, the dreamers who are still believing they can crack into the elite level. Tiley continued, saying from boosting qualifying prize money by 55% since 2023 to enhancing player benefits, we are ensuring professional tennis is sustainable for all competitors. Did you catch that number? 55% increase in qualifying prize money over just 3 years. That is absolutely astronomical growth that is fundamentally changing the economics of being a professional tennis player. This is not charity. This is Tennis Australia investing in the depth of the sport, ensuring that talented players can afford to keep competing and developing their games. Now let me hit you with the number that absolutely floored me when I first heard it. If you show up to the Australian Open main draw and you lose in the first round, if you get absolutely demolished in straight sets and have the worst day of your professional life on court, you still walk away with $150,000. Let that sink in for a moment. First round losers are taking home 6-figure paychecks. That is more money than the total prize pool of some entire challenger tournaments. That is more than what most people make in 2 or 3 years of regular work. And you get it for showing up and playing one match, even if you lose. The financial safety net extends even further down the ladder. If you are grinding through the qualifying rounds, just fighting to earn your spot in the main draw, you are still looking at over $40,000 even if you lose in the first round of qualifying. Think about what that means for a player ranked 180th in the world. That is an entire year's worth of travel expenses covered in 1 week. That is the difference between being able to afford a coach for the next 6 months or having to practice alone. That is the difference between continuing your career or having to retire and find a regular job. Craig Tiley calls this approach strengthening tennis's foundation, but we should call it what it really is, life-changing money that is keeping the dream alive for hundreds of professional tennis players. This is not just generosity for the sake of good PR. This is a calculated strategic move to ensure that the talent pool in professional tennis stays deep, competitive, and hungry. Tiley himself explained it perfectly when he said, "By supporting players at all levels, we are building deeper talent pools and more compelling storylines for fans." And you know what? He is absolutely right about that. When players do not have to worry about whether they can afford their next flight to the next tournament, when they are not lying awake at night doing mental math about whether they can afford to hire a physiotherapist, they play better tennis. The hunger and competitive fire are still there, but the soul-crushing desperation gets replaced by motivation and confidence. These players can focus on improving their games rather than just surviving financially. That creates better matches, more upsets, more Cinderella stories, and ultimately more entertaining tennis for all of us watching. The investment Tennis Australia is making is unprecedented in the sport. While the other Grand Slams have increased their prize money over the years, nobody is moving as aggressively as Melbourne. The Australian Open is positioning itself as the most player-friendly major championship in the world, and that reputation is going to pay dividends for years to come. Players are going to remember this. When they are deciding how to prepare their seasons, when they are thinking about which tournaments truly value them, Melbourne is going to be at the top of that list. This is how you build loyalty, and this is how you ensure that the best players in the world bring their absolute best tennis to your tournament. Now that we have broken down where all this money is going, let's talk about who is going to be fighting to take it home. Because folks, the storylines in the men's draw for the 2026 Australian Open are absolutely dripping with drama. we have officially entered a new era in men's tennis. The Big Three era of Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic completely dominating everything is over, though the ghost of the GOAT still very much lingers over this tournament. What we are witnessing now is a changing of the guard combined with the desperate last stand of a legend, and it is going to be absolutely must-watch television. Let's start with the defending champion and the current betting favorite, the Italian Iceman himself, Jannik Sinner. This guy has been absolutely unstoppable in Melbourne over the past 2 years. In 2024, he shocked the tennis world by winning his first Grand Slam title at the Australian Open, beating Daniil Medvedev in an epic comeback final. People wondered if it was a fluke, if he had just gotten hot at the right time. Then 2025 came around, and Sinner proved that it was no fluke whatsoever. He defended his title, cementing his status as the king of Melbourne Park. Now in 2026, Sinner is gunning for something truly special, a three-peat. Do you understand how incredibly rare that is? Winning the same Grand Slam 3 times in a row is the stuff of legends. Only the absolute greatest players in tennis history have accomplished that feat, but if anyone can do it right now, it is Jannik Sinner on these courts. He absolutely loves the conditions in Melbourne. The blue hard courts at Melbourne Park bounce exactly the way he likes them to bounce, fast, true, and consistent. His game is built for these surfaces. His laser beam ground strokes, his ability to take the ball early and flatten it out, his improved serve, his mental toughness. Everything clicks for him here. Sinner is walking into this tournament with the kind of swagger and confidence that only comes from winning. He knows these courts intimately. He knows the sidelines in Rod Laver Arena. He knows how to handle the pressure of being the favorite. He is coming in with the attitude that says, "This is my house, and you are all just visiting." And honestly, based on the last 2 years, it is hard to argue with that mindset. The question is not whether Sinner can win. The question is whether anyone can possibly beat him when he is playing his best tennis on his favorite surface. But standing directly in Sinner's path to history is the current world number 1, the Spanish sensation Carlos Alcaraz. Now, Carlitos is one of the most exciting players we have ever seen in tennis. His combination of power, speed, creativity, and fearlessness is absolutely breathtaking to watch. He has already won 3 Grand Slam titles at the age of just 22. He has conquered Wimbledon. He has conquered the US Open. He has conquered Roland Garros on the clay courts of Paris. His resume is already Hall of Fame worthy, and he is barely getting started. But there is one glaring hole in that otherwise spectacular resume, and it is shaped exactly like the Australian Open trophy. Alcaraz has never been able to crack the code in Melbourne. He has never made it past the quarterfinals at this tournament. For a player of his immense talent and ambition, that has to be eating him alive. Every other major has fallen to him, but the Happy Slam has remained stubbornly out of reach. The fast courts, the hot conditions, the timing of the season right at the beginning of the year, something about Melbourne has not clicked for Alcaraz the way other tournaments have. This year feels different though. Alcaraz is coming in as the world number 1, which means the pressure is on him to perform. But more than the ranking, more than the $4.15 million paycheck, this is about legacy for Carlos Alcaraz. If he wins the Australian Open this year, he completes the career Grand Slam at just 22 years old. He would join the most elite club in tennis history, a group of players who have won all 4 majors. That is the kind of achievement that separates the great players from the absolute legends of the sport. The question hanging over Alcaraz is whether he can handle the pressure, both the external expectations and the internal drive to complete his collection. Can he handle the literal heat of an Australian summer? And then, lurking in the draw like a dangerous predator waiting to strike, we have the wolf himself, Novak Djokovic. Novak is currently ranked world number 4, which by his standards is practically an insult. People are starting to whisper. They are saying he is too old now, that at 38 years old his body cannot compete with these younger, faster, hungrier players. They are saying that the new two of Sinner and Alcaraz have officially surpassed him, that the torch has been passed, that Novak's time is done. Do not, and I cannot stress this enough, do not count this man out. Ever. Novak Djokovic has won the Australian Open 10 times. 10 championships at one tournament. That is not luck. That is not a coincidence. That is complete and total domination. Rod Laver Arena might as well be named Novak Djokovic Arena based on how many times he has lifted the trophy there. He treats that court like his personal living room, like his safe space where he goes to remind the world who the best player in history is. Novak is coming into this tournament with the biggest chip on his shoulder we have seen in years. Everyone doubting him, everyone writing him off, everyone saying the new generation has taken over. That is exactly the kind of fuel that makes Djokovic dangerous. He feeds off being the underdog, off proving people wrong, off shoving his success back in the faces of his critics. If there is anyone on the planet who can dismantle a roadblock through pure spite, mental fortitude, and an absolutely unbreakable will to win, it is Novak Djokovic. Imagine the scenes if the old guard comes roaring back to snatch the biggest paycheck in tennis history away from the young guns. It would be the ultimate "I'm not done yet" statement, and it would send shockwaves through the entire sport. Now, it would not be a proper tabloid-style rundown without mentioning who was not going to be in Melbourne, and we have got some heartbreaking news for fans of some of the rising stars in men's tennis. Jack Draper, the exciting young British player who has been climbing the rankings and showing tremendous potential, is out of the tournament due to injury. Holger Rune, the fiery Danish player with the explosive game and even more explosive personality, is also out, and his situation is particularly devastating. Rune is recovering from a ruptured Achilles tendon, which is one of the worst injuries an athlete can suffer. The rehab timeline for that kind of injury is long and uncertain, and it raises serious questions about whether he will ever get back to the level he was playing at before. These absences definitely thin out the field a bit, particularly in terms of exciting young players who could have caused problems for the favorites. However, every absence also creates opportunity. The path for the top guys like Sinner, Alcaraz, and Djokovic becomes slightly clearer without these dangerous floaters in the draw. But it also means that someone unexpected could catch fire and make a deep run. Keep your eyes on players like Ben Shelton, the big serving American whose kick serve could be absolutely lethal on the bouncy Melbourne courts. Keep an eye on dark horses who might see this as their chance to break through and grab some of that life-changing prize money. If you thought the drama in the men's draw was intense, buckle up, because the women's side of things is straight-up Game of Thrones with tennis rackets. We are talking about revenge plots, redemption arcs, career-defining chases, and enough storylines to fill an entire season of a prestige television drama. The betting favorite heading into the tournament is Belarusian powerhouse Aryna Sabalenka, and there are very good reasons why the bookmakers have her at the top of their lists. Sabalenka just absolutely destroyed the field at the Brisbane International warm-up tournament, blasting her way to the title with the kind of dominant, aggressive tennis that makes opponents want to hide in the locker room. She is playing scary good tennis right now. Her serve is a weapon. Her ground strokes are coming off her racket like missiles. Her movement has improved. Her mental game is sharper. Everything is clicking. But here is where the storyline gets really juicy. Sabalenka is not just playing to win. She is playing with pure vengeance coursing through her veins. Remember what happened last year at the 2025 Australian Open final? Sabalenka was the heavy favorite going into that match against American Madison Keys. Everyone in the tennis world assumed that Sabalenka was going to cruise to her third Australian Open title. The trophy seemed like a formality. And then Madison Keys showed up and played the match of her life, pulling off one of the biggest upsets in recent Grand Slam history. Sabalenka lost her crown in heartbreaking fashion. In the lead-up to this year's tournament, Sabalenka has been very open about her mindset. She said, and I am quoting directly here, that she wants to do a little bit better than last year. That is classic athlete speak, folks. That is code for I am about to go on an absolute warpath through this draw. Sabalenka is not here to participate. She is not here to have a nice run and see what happens. She is here to reclaim what she believes is rightfully hers. She loves Australia. She has won this tournament twice before, in 2023 and 2024. She had started building a dynasty, and then last year's loss interrupted that narrative. Now she is back to finish what she started, and heaven help anyone who gets in her way. Speaking of Madison Keys, we absolutely have to talk about the defending champion. Keys pulled off the shock of the year by winning the 2025 Australian Open, and yet somehow she is still being disrespected in the pre-tournament coverage. Everyone is talking about Sabalenka this and Iga Swiatek that, while Keys is almost an afterthought despite being the actual reigning champion. That has to be frustrating for her, but it also might work in her favor. Keys has always played her best tennis when the pressure is off, when she can freewheel and just blast winners without overthinking everything. Madison Keys possesses one of the most naturally powerful games in women's tennis. When she is locked in and confident, her ground strokes are basically unreturnable. She can hit anyone off the court with her effortless power. The question mark with Keys has always been consistency, both within matches and across tournaments. Can she bring that championship-level performance again? Defending a Grand Slam title is completely different from winning one. The pressure flips. Now you are the hunted rather than the hunter. Everyone has you circled on their schedule. Everyone is preparing specifically for your game. Can Madison Keys prove that 2025 was not a one-hit wonder but rather the beginning of a new chapter in her career? Then we have Iga Swiatek, the world number 2 and one of the most dominant players in women's tennis over the past few years. Swiatek is an absolute force on clay courts. She has won the French Open multiple times and looks completely unbeatable on that surface. She has also proven herself on slower hard courts. But Melbourne has been her kryptonite. She has never made it to the final of the Australian Open, which for a player of her caliber and ambition is a glaring hole in her resume. Swiatek is chasing the career Grand Slam, just like Alcaraz on the men's side. She desperately wants to add the Australian Open to her collection, to prove that she can win on all surfaces and in all conditions. But there are legitimate questions about whether her game is suited to the fast courts in Melbourne. The balls skid through quicker here. The conditions favor big servers and flat hitters. Swiatek's extreme topspin forehand and grinding baseline game have not translated as well to these courts. The tennis world is watching to see if this is finally the year that Iga figures out the Australian Open puzzle, or if Melbourne will continue to be the one major that eludes her. And we absolutely cannot forget about Coco Gauff, the young American superstar who is rapidly becoming one of the most popular players in tennis. Gauff just won the French Open, claiming her second Grand Slam title and proving that her US Open victory was no fluke. What makes Gauff so dangerous now is that she has evolved her game significantly. She is not just a defensive wall anymore, the speedy retriever who runs down every ball and waits for her opponent to miss. She has added serious weapons to her arsenal. Her serve has become much more reliable and powerful. Her forehand is bigger and more aggressive. She is taking the ball earlier and dictating points rather than just reacting. Gauff has already beaten Sabalenka in a Grand Slam final, so she knows she can win the biggest matches against the biggest names. The mental hurdle has been cleared. Now it is about bringing the championship tennis consistently and handling the expectations that come with being a young American superstar. While everyone is talking about the Sinner versus Alcaraz rivalry brewing on the men's side, the real tactical warfare might be happening in the women's draw with this fascinating triangle between Sabalenka, Gauff, and Swiatek. They all have different playing styles, different strengths and weaknesses, and they all match up differently against each other. It is going to be fascinating to see how that plays out. The women's draw has been hit with some notable absences that change the competitive landscape a bit. Bianca Andreescu, the former US Open champion who burst onto the scene by beating Serena Williams in that final, has made a shocking and frankly sad decision. She opted not to enter the qualifying rounds for the Australian Open and instead is playing in a lower-level challenger event in Florida. For fans who remember her at her peak, this is heartbreaking to watch. It represents a dramatic fall from grace for a player who once looked destined to be a multi-slam champion. Injuries and confidence issues have derailed her career, and now she is rebuilding from scratch at a much lower level of the sport. Ons Jabeur, the creative Tunisian player who has been a finalist at multiple majors, is also out of the tournament, but for the best possible reason. She is on maternity leave, starting her family, and we wish her nothing but happiness. However, from a pure tennis perspective, her absence removes one of the most entertaining and unpredictable players from the draw. Jabeur's trick shots and touch play always made her matches must-watch television. Danielle Collins, who made the final of the Australian Open back in 2022 and has been a consistent presence in the later rounds of majors, is out with a back injury. That is another big name missing from the women's draw, which means the tournament feels very top-heavy right now. It looks like we are heading toward an inevitable collision between Sabalenka, Swiatek, and Gauff, with Madison Keys trying to defend her title against the onslaught of the absolute elite. Now, I promised you tabloid drama, and nothing says tabloid quite like the Bernard Tomic Chronicles. Yes, you read that right. Bernard Tomic, the bad boy of Australian tennis, the player who once famously said he was bored on court and that he was just counting his millions while losing matches, is attempting a comeback. This is the kind of storyline that reality TV producers would kill for. Tomic is in the qualifying rounds for the Australian Open, trying to fight his way into the main draw. This represents what tennis media is calling his quiet comeback. After years of controversy, poor results, public feuds with Tennis Australia, and a dramatic decline in the rankings, Tomic has been grinding away in the lower leagues of professional tennis, trying to claw his way back into relevance. In recent interviews, Tomic has said that if he can get back to the top level of the sport, then I can retire with his head held high. It is almost a redemption arc, or at least an attempt at one. Just imagine the absolute scenes if Bernie Tomic somehow qualifies for the main draw and then catches fire and makes a run deep into the tournament. The Australian crowd would lose their collective minds. Tomic is older now, perhaps wiser, maybe even humbled by the journey back from rock bottom. Or maybe he is still the same controversial character he always was. Either way, it is compelling viewing. The qualifying rounds of the Australian Open are not usually must-watch tennis, but this year, with Tomic fighting for his tennis life, they are absolutely worth paying attention to. This is where the reality show is happening right now, and it could produce one of the most unexpected storylines of the entire tournament. Let's take a moment to circle back and really dive into the economics of what Tennis Australia is doing here, because the decision to drop $111.5 million in prize money is not just about being generous or player-friendly. This is a calculated business decision that reveals how the tennis economy is evolving in 2026. This is what Court Vision Plus is all about, bringing you closer to the sport you love, helping you understand it at a deeper level, and creating content that entertains while it informs. We are passionate about tennis, and that passion comes through in everything we create. We are not just reading stats off a screen. We are not just regurgitating press releases. We are doing the work, finding the stories, and presenting them to you in the most engaging way possible. So one more time, if you have made it this far in the video, thank you for watching. Thank you for being part of this journey with us. Please hit that like button to let us know you enjoyed the content. Drop a comment below with your Australian Open predictions and thoughts on the prize money. Subscribe to Court Vision Plus so you never miss another video. And turn on those notifications so YouTube actually shows you our content when we post it. The Australian Open starts January 12th and runs through February 1st. 2 weeks of world-class tennis. 2 weeks of drama, upsets, and incredible athletic performances. 2 weeks of players competing for the biggest prize money in tennis history. And Court Vision Plus will be here for all of it, bringing you the best coverage you can find anywhere on YouTube. From Melbourne Park to your screen, from the qualifying rounds to the championship finals, from the no-name grinders fighting for their $40,000 paychecks to the superstars battling for $4 million in immortality, we are going to cover it all. This is tennis at its highest level, its most dramatic, its most financially rewarding, and its most entertaining. This is why we love this sport. Until next time, keep your eyes on the ball, keep your eyes on the money, and keep coming back to Court Vision Plus for the realest tennis coverage on the internet. This is Court Vision Plus, signing off, and we will see you in the next video where we will be breaking down the opening matches and giving you all the drama from day one in Melbourne. Do not forget to subscribe. Court Vision Plus, your #1 source